All right, moving on in our exploration of emotions. One of the things with emotions is something called embodied emotions, and this is basically how our body reacts to the different emotions that we have. Well, it's our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems that activate when we experience emotions. Very similar to when we experience the fight or flight response. It is the various things that activate that kind of determine the emotional response that we are going to have. Now, Robert Zajonc, Joseph Ledoux, and Richard Lazarus investigated this idea of, can we have emotions without awareness or cognition? And do we embody different emotions differently? And their theory was that some emotional reactions, especially fears, likes, and dislikes, develop in a low road through the brain, skipping conscious thought. So, in one study, people showed an amygdala response to certain images, okay, to the above left, without being aware of the image or their reaction. So they were just showed people different eyes. Now, this eye obviously elicited some kind of a fear response, more of a fear response than these eyes, because it demonstrates some of the things that we identify with fear responses. So basically, what they found is that certain emotions have what go through what we call the speedy low road, meaning that the fear stimulus comes in, goes to the thalamus, then straight to the amygdala, and we experience the emotion. Now, other emotions though go to the thalamus, then go to the sensory cortex, then go to the prefrontal cortex, then go to the amygdala, and then have the fear response. So, for instance, what kind of emotions would go this speedy low road? Well, again, if a car was driving towards us like we used in the last example, yes, okay, we're not going to have to think about whether or not this is a dangerous situation. We're going to know oncoming car, scary. Okay. However, maybe if you're out on a dark and scary, you're out at night and you're walking and you hear some sounds, right? And you hear some creaking and stuff, and so your senses are going to go in full alert, and then your prefrontal cortex is going to kick in, and you're going to start thinking about it. What do those sounds sound like? Does it sound like a person? Does it sound like an animal? Does it sound like a wind? So your brain is going to have to think about it a little bit. Then when your prefrontal cortex has determined and made the judgment that, okay, yes, this is a scary situation, your amygdala is going to kick in and you're going to have the fear response. Okay, so again, their idea, the Jajonka, Ledoux, and Lazarus kind of idea, was that some emotions appear kind of without this conscious appraisal, and others do, depending on kind of the necessity for that emotion. So, when does appraisal affect our emotion? Well, Schachter and Singer highlighted the role of appraisal in labeling consciously experienced emotions. So, this agitation is fear. Okay. Lazarus noted that even in emotional responses that operate without conscious thought, top-down cognitive functions such as appraisal of stimuli, is this a threat or something that I would enjoy, can be involved. So again, they kind of talked about these two routes to emotion, right? They talked about either the appraisal and then the emotional response, or they talked about the event and then purely the emotional response. And again, it has to do with the stimuli that you are experiencing is kind of the big thing. Do you need to appraise it, or is it something that is definitely ingrained in us to be naturally fearful of? So when you hear the phrase, or you're asked about something, the two routes to emotion, this is what it's talking about. Okay, route one is either just stimuli, emotional response. Route two is appraisal and then emotional response. All right, so for embodied emotions, that's, basically kind of sums it up in a nutshell, is that our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system play the role, right? That is our fight or flight response that gets our body aroused or unaroused. And then depending on the emotion, we either have the cognitive piece, the appraisal, or we just strictly have the emotional response.